Scattered across New England are 10 geological formations named after King Philip. King Philip was the English name given to Metacomet, the Wampanoag chief who, in the 1670s, waged war against the English colonists, a war he almost won. I've decided I want to visit all 10 of these places, learn their stories. Why are they named after King Philip? What exactly happened here? So, I'm going to follow King Philip during the last year of his life. He had to march, but I've got wheels. The first place I'm going to go to is called King Philip's Stockade. It's just down the road in Springfield, Massachusetts. I'm in Forest Park, just on the edge of Springfield. It was here in the summer of 1675. He and his forces launched their first major attack against the largest colonist city in western Massachusetts at the time, Springfield. You can walk it. The area is all a beautiful park now, and they of course have a nice statue dedicated to King Philip himself right here. Believe it or not, that is not a statue of Metacomet. That's a statue of an Indian warrior from the Windsor tribe, loyal to the colonists, who tried to warn the colonists of Metacomet's attack. But Metacomet gathered hundreds of his troops here, and in the early morning, in that summer day, 1675, completely destroyed Springfield, left every single building a smoldering ruins. This was all clear, open space back in Metacomet's day. This is all second growth forest right here. And instead of overlooking the river, it now has a great view of I-91. The highway kind of ruins it a little bit, but aside from that, the city of Springfield has done an amazing job preserving this land, turning it into a park, a day-use area. They do have this statue. I wish they had a little more info about Metacomet himself, but this is a beautiful park and a great place to start this adventure. I think it's interesting that this statue erected at King Philip's Stockade is of a spy loyal to the English. Espionage is something that Philip had to deal with more aggressively as the war went on. One time he even executed a supposed spy in front of that spy's younger brother. That younger brother's name was Antoquin. Springfield was the largest English village in western Massachusetts in that day, as it is today. It was actually the largest village in the entire Connecticut River Valley, and sacking it was probably the high point of the war for King Philip in terms of victories on the battlefield. After this, he fought a mostly defensive campaign. The English became much more aggressive, kicked him out of eastern Massachusetts, and by the end of 1675, King Philip traveled to the Hudson River Valley to meet with the Mohawk Indians. It was a desperate attempt to bring them on board in his war, and they met right here in this field in the present-day village of Schaghticoke, where the Knickerbocker Mansion now sits.
During the King Philip Wars, Governor Andros, the governor of New York Providence, invited the refugees from the King Philip Wars to come and live in the Hoosic River Valley. And the Mohawks said, yes, they can be here. And 1,000 refugees were here to do this peace treaty.
This right here is the concrete cast of a giant 30-foot wide oak tree that stood here on the Knickerbocker Mansion property. This tree was planted to commemorate King Philip's refugees who came here to try to negotiate with the Mohawk. That meeting, however, did not go the way King Philip wanted. It became clear during negotiations that the Mohawk were representing Governor Edmund Andros, the English governor at the time, who had an ulterior motive. He wanted King Philip and his Wampanoag as refugees to settle here permanently, to create a buffer against French raids down the Hudson River Valley. But Metacomet did not want to settle here permanently. He wanted to continue his campaign back in Massachusetts. After about 2 months of failed negotiation, it became clear to him the Mohawk were not going to join his campaign, so he made a decision to leave. There's some writings online that say that the Mohawk launched a surprise attack against King Philip's men, slaughtered hundreds, 400, 500 of his men. I don't think that actually happened. The tour guide of the Knickerbocker Mansion, who has a better grasp of the local history than I do, also doesn't think that actually happened. I think negotiations just hit a brick wall. It became clear that the Mohawk were satisfied in their arrangement with the English, wanted nothing to do with this campaign. Food started to run low, spring was going to come soon, and King Philip just had to leave and go rescue what was left of his campaign in Massachusetts. He left here in early February 1676. January had to be a very trying month for King Philip and his men. They didn't get the Mohawk alliance, they were starving, they were freezing. So in early February, his men came here to Lancaster, the largest English colony in Worcester County at the time. They destroyed the town, they took all the provisions they can. They also took hostages. This beautiful tract of land here along the Nashua River was the home of Reverend Rowlandson, who was in Boston at the time trying to solicit troops to help defend the town from an Indian attack. His wife and 3 kids were amongst those taken captive. Mary would survive the ordeal after 11 weeks of captivity. 1 of her 3 kids would not, unfortunately. She actually survived by sewing for the Indians, and they gave her favors and spared her life that way. But her chronicle of her ordeal would go into print and actually become the best-selling print article of its day. A national bestseller, if you will, 100 years before we were even a nation. After Lancaster, Metacomet took all his captives to the next place we're going to. This next King Philip's Rock is also my personal favorite. It's right next to a campground I stay at all the time called Lake Denison. Actually, seeing it on the map is what inspired me to do this entire video. So I just had to reverse down a harrowing dirt road for 1.5 miles because this next King Philip's Rock is apparently totally inaccessible by road. Google Maps won't tell you that though. I think what I'm gonna do is park at Lake Denison and just hike through the woods. Alright, here we go. Middle road. This should take us right to the rock. Yeah, this has got to be my favorite King Philip's Rock yet. Just getting here is an odyssey. You have to hoof it, folks, but the hike is incredible. This is where King Philip brought Mary Rowlandson and her infant daughter during their captivity. After capturing them from Lancaster, they went to Templeton and then to here. Actually, it was here that Mary Rowlandson's infant daughter died. So this rock has special significance. This is also one of the better documented Indian gathering places in Massachusetts. A lot of artifacts have been excavated from around this rock. It's very likely that King Philip knew about this rock before even arriving. It's amazing to think that this was once a gathered area. It's just so protected and wild today. And this placement of this boulder overlooking this bend in the Millers River is just glorious. So when they left this place, not only did Mary Rowlandson lose her baby daughter, it was freezing cold winter. Everyone was miserable. Everyone was getting sick. So Metacomet took his captives and his men to a tried and true place, an overlook looking over the Connecticut River, about 30 miles from here. That's where we're going next. I'm at King Philip's Hill Trail, which has me walking through a giant trench. There's only parking enough for 1 car at a time. This is in Northfield, Massachusetts. Yeah, King Philip came here after he left Athol with Mary Rowlandson, his captive, and he stayed here possibly for a couple of weeks in the winter of 1676. So this is very strange. I came here several years ago in my photography days and don't remember all of this area next to the hill being clear cut like this. There's no development though, so I'm not sure what they're doing with the land, but right up here should be the Connecticut River. How nice that someone put a bench on this overlook right here. There's also a sign right there, the only other sign besides the one at the trailhead that tells you a little bit about this land. King Philip stayed here for a long time. He came in February of 1676. I can see why he liked this particular spot. When it's winter and all these trees are bare, you have a spectacular view of this turn in the Connecticut River. You can see probably the next state over. It's beautiful all times of year. I would love to just sit here and relax and ponder my war against the invaders, whatever he did. Yeah, King Philip's Hill in Northfield, Mass. This one is a good one. One thing to keep in mind if you want to climb down to the Connecticut River here like I just did, the whole riverbank is like quicksand. I mean, it is literally quicksand. I put my foot in, went down like a foot. I think the entire river is like this. Now I need to somehow climb back up and get to my car. I couldn't help but notice when I climbed back up, there's one of those geocache things right here. Let's take a look. There's also a little geocache book here. Let's see how recently updated it is. So the last visitor was 4/16/24. I just added my own note here, 7/20/24, Matt, aka Under the Radar Van. I will put all this stuff back away just as it was, make sure it's nice and waterproof, then get back to my van. I think King Philip's time at that ledge must have been very dark for him. He lost that alliance with the Mohawks, and with it lost any chance of reconquering Eastern Mass. He was now getting kicked out of Central Mass, and he was taking captives in a desperate attempt to raise money to pay his men who were starting to desert him. He had to be questioning his own mortality by this point. I don't know if you guys can really see, but those are the beautiful mountains of Connecticut. I'm so glad this path finally took me here. I'm in the beautiful Talcott Mountains State Forest just northwest of Hartford, and Metacomet came here just 3 weeks after leaving Northfield. Now, it's assumed that he just simply marched everywhere, but I also read that winter was one of the coldest on record, and I personally have seen the Connecticut River freeze over during super cold winters. I'm theorizing that he simply walked the Connecticut River from Northfield down to here like a giant highway. My theory. It doesn't matter though, for hikers like you and I, it's much easier to find this place, and X marks the spot, or I should say H. As for the spur trail to King Philip's Cave, which is named in his honor, where he supposedly launched one of his last attacks of the campaign, the spur path is right here, very easy to miss. All right, this trail is wild for Connecticut anyway. There's a split right here that's very hard to see. Maybe you can see a path going down that way. I would think he would want his cave to be as high as a perch as possible. So I'm gonna explore up this way. On the way back, I'll see what's down that little path there. Anyway, I'm thoroughly enjoying this hike, and in amazement that Metacomet climbed up here with his bare feet. All right, here we go. We're definitely coming up on a view, and I am on the cliff's ledge, the edge of destruction right here. I am so close. Oh, holy cow. Look at this. So this is a great ledge, but it isn't a cave. I want to find the cave. So this hike up to this cave is some serious rock climbing, folks. I have to respect Metacomet. He must have been a very physically fit person. There's only one way I see that anyone could get into that cave up there, and it's through this very rocky, steep, narrow crevice. I'm doing it right now. Don't have any ropes or anything. It's starting to rain. I think I can handle this though. I did Huntington Ravine in worse conditions than this. But if you're gonna come here, just know that this is rock climbing. It is not casual hiking. It's easy to see why Metacomet chose this perch to watch his final raid. Panoramic views of the valley below from up here. By the time he got here, he was in desperate need of food and provisions for his men. It was late March, he was cold, his winter had been completely futile. His raids typically followed a pattern. They would infiltrate under the cover of darkness, ambush anyone on the street as quietly as possible, torch the houses. This would force the occupants out from smoke inhalation. Then they would be attacked. But by this time in the war, the English had gotten pretty smart. They learned how to destroy and hide their provisions very quickly, and Metacomet left here with almost nothing to show for this raid. I think sitting here, like I'm doing right now, watching the valley below, he must have been deep in thought. I think it was in this very cave that he decided he wanted to go home. So he turned east, but he'd have to fight his whole way there. Ah, yes, this looks familiar. I'm excited about this next King Philip's Rock, folks. I am back in eastern Massachusetts. I'm at King Philip's Overlook in the town of Sherborn. Let me just lock up the van. Yeah, this is the only of the King Philip's Rocks I've been to before, prior to this adventure. This hike is also a fun one. We park here on Route 27. We have to hike through the woods and then cross some either power lines or train tracks. I vaguely remember it being train tracks. And then here we get to King Philip's Overlook. Yeah, let's be careful when crossing these train tracks. So according to Google Maps, we have to walk down here for quite a ways. I'm keeping my eye out for something on the left. Yeah, you gotta keep your eyes peeled for this one, not only for trains, but for the trailhead itself. This reservation has grown since the last time I was here. Apparently they keep adding new tracts of land to it, which is great. Yeah, during Metacomet's war, this place already had the nickname the Gates of the Charles. It was felt that everything downstream on this side was kind of white man land, and everything upstream on this side was the Indian territory. You can see why Metacomet liked this spot. It overlooks a big oxbow in the river. You can see upstream any enemy boats or enemy, patrols advancing for maybe a mile or so. But you can see downstream several miles, maybe 5 or 6 miles all the way towards Boston. You can see the entire river. You can't see it right now because it's all overgrown. I should have come back in the fall, but the Charles River comes right here in front at the base of this rock. All right, I'm not sure I can get all the way down to the river's edge. We're higher up than I thought. I would say maybe a good 100 feet. Isn't that pretty? Yeah, if you do want to go down to the water's edge, just keep in mind you do have to climb back up. It's pretty steep. I did that in flip-flops. I ran into some thorns, got cut up pretty bad. I'm getting back to my car now. There's another King Philip's Rock just about 20 minutes south of here. I wanted to hit that before it got too dark. Yeah, this is nice, this Route 27, which goes to the last King Philip's Overlook. I've really enjoyed all these roads that this adventure's taken me on. Massachusetts has so many cute, quaint, small towns that people don't even know of, just like off the main highways. Yeah, wow, this is pretty small. Yeah, here's the road and here's the trailhead. Very easy to miss. So this has to be my favorite trail yet. You're literally between two people's yards right here. There's a sign up here. King Philip's Rock is that way. King Philip's Cave is that way. Let's hit the rock first. I'm seeing this place for the first time with you guys, but there are a lot of those erratic boulders deposited by glaciers. Some of the King Philip's Rocks I've already been to have been exactly that. Makes me wonder what this one is. Just like I thought, a big pile of erratic boulders. Reminds me a lot of the Rock House on Route 9. Yeah, this one has one main rock right up there that I was able to get on top of. It's a little bit of climbing. I had to take my flip-flops off. I think there might be some caves over on the other side. Oh, wow, look at all these giant erratics we're coming upon. This supposedly has boulder caves. Oh, man. I gotta take you guys along for this one. From where you guys are, you have two options. You can go to the left right there and exit through a tunnel here, or you can come into this corridor. This is wide enough to have a little party in. This definitely would have been a meeting place. From what I read online, there's been archaeological digs around here. Tools and artifacts dating back to the Paleolithic era. So I'll go this way since it's a bit longer. I'll take you guys through that corridor. I don't think you get a sense of space unless there's a person in the shot, but I'm gonna exit through here because I'm getting banged up pretty bad on all the boulders. This has to be my favorite King Philip's Rock yet. I know I've said that about every place I've been to, but this one, just the way those boulders are standing there in the woods, it's so enchanting. The last King Philip's Rock I'm gonna take you guys on is actually called King Philip's Seat. You're gonna see why. It's probably the holiest place of all of these King Philip's formations. It's where King Philip was born, and I'm gonna take you guys through the last day of his life there. Now, I thought Mount Hope was originally an English name given to this peak that overlooks the Narragansett Bay. This is where Metacomet was born and what the Wampanoag considered their sort of seat of government. No, Mount Hope is not an English name. The Wampanoag word for this location was Mount Hope, Montaup, which the Anglicans just adopted and used the English alphabet, but they called it the same thing. I thought that was interesting. As for the hike getting here, this is on private property. There are specific visiting hours. I'm saving this place for last because I think it's the best hike of them all. Just the fact that it takes some planning to get into, and it just feels so spiritual. A little stone monument back there marks the summit of Mount Hope. Also in Mount Hope is a beautiful rocky outcropping called King Philip's Cave. It's the last King Philip rock in this adventure that I need to visit. It was also the last rock that Metacomet visited. I'm sure he did a lot of reflecting by the time he got here in early summer of 1676. King Philip's chair is literally that, a natural seat formation in the stone right here. It forms its own natural amphitheater. It's just made to be used for speaking to a crowd. It would be the last place King Philip ever sat, unfortunately, which is why it's the last King Philip's rock I visit on this adventure. When King Philip got here in the early summer of 76, Antocwin, that Wampanoag whose older brother was executed as a spy, he was waiting here for Metacomet. He observed Metacomet's routines, learned his paths. When the timing was right, he snuck up on Metacomet and shot him in the back in this swamp right over here and killed him. This seat would be the last place that Metacomet ever sat. Unfortunately, it would not be the last place where his body lay. His body was taken to Plymouth for the English to see. And there, unfortunately, well, I'll tell you the rest of the story when I get there. But for a moment, I'm just gonna enjoy this beautiful stone, this beautiful white quartz stone formation that just stands out, this holy place. This has to be the best King Philip's rock I've visited yet. I'm glad I saved it for last. Right here in downtown Plymouth is where this story ends. This plaque right here commemorates Metacomet. This is a newer plaque and it's written in a fairly unbiased way. I'll read what it says. Metacomet was murdered in Rhode Island in August 1676 and his body was mutilated. His head was impaled on a pike and displayed near the site for more than 20 years. One hand was sent to Boston, the other to England. Metacomet's wife and son, along with the families of many of the Native American combatants, were sold into slavery in the West Indies by the English victors. It's worth noting that King Philip was never meant to be king. His older brother Wamsuta was. Actually, when Massasoit died in 1660, the great Wampanoag chief who made peace with the Pilgrims, Philip's father, it was Philip's older brother Wamsuta that inherited the throne. And actually Wamsuta was summoned to Boston in the first year of his rule to meet with Josiah Winslow, the commander of the English militia at the time, just to make peace. And Wamsuta did not return from that meeting alive. It's not clear if he was poisoned or what happened. I think Metacomet had to have a lingering suspicion in his mind that Winslow was responsible for his brother's death. In fact, Winslow's home being destroyed was one of the first acts of this war. As I went through all these different King Philip's rocks and learned about their history, it was amazing to me how hard it is to get unbiased information about what actually happened. For example, the first place we went to in Springfield, the statue there is not of King Philip himself at the King Philip Stockade. It's of a traitor to King Philip who tried to warn the English about King Philip's attack. Going in the other direction, if you read about how King Philip died, it reads like an Englishman killed him because the Wampanoag that killed him was a praying Indian. He had converted to Christianity and assumed a Christian name. This was a spiritual journey for me as someone who loves hiking and loves learning about history and the truth. It's a very sad, tragic story about Metacomet. It's almost like the last year of his life were not in his own hands. It was just fate pushing him from place to place. But in his honor, all of these King Philip's rocks, these are beautiful places. These bear his name, and these will last forever. And no matter what information shines through, no matter how it's biased or filtered, I think he would be honored that all these beautiful places are named after him. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this adventure as much as I did, learned a lot about history. Hit the like button below if you do. I also have a Patreon if you want to help me out. I do hikes across Massachusetts and New England all the time. Anyway, peace out everyone. Thanks for watching.